Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Westside UU's Sunday Morning Reflection. I'm the Reverend Carol Bedeau. My pronouns are she and hers, and I'm privileged to serve Westside as minister. And today we're celebrating the Fall Equinox here at the farm. So welcome to the farm. This is September 20th, the time of the Fall Harvest Festival, and that's what we're celebrating today. If you're interested in more about Westside, our gatherings, our adult religious education courses, and the other offerings we have, make sure to check out our website. And you can also look at our Facebook page for more information about how to connect with us. Today, we're going to start with words from Anne Hillman. We're all on a journey together to the center of the universe. Look deep into yourself, into another. It is to a center which is everywhere. That is the holy journey. First, you need only look. Notice and honor the radiance of everything about you. Play in this universe. Tend all of these shining things. The plants, the creatures, the objects in your care. Be gentle and nurture. Listen. As we experience and accept all that we really are, we grow in care. We begin to embrace others and ourselves and learn to live as one among the many. We light a chalice and we sound a bowl to invite us to come into our centers and into the present moment. On this fall day, I invite you to become awake. To become awake in a way that's not about mental acuity or thinking, but about presence, about being fully present and connected to all of life. This is an awakeness and aliveness that goes beyond the mind, but includes the mind. It goes beyond the body, but includes the body. It goes beyond emotion, but includes emotion. It goes beyond the self, but includes the self. So as our bowl sounds, I invite you to wake up to this beautiful fall day. So happy Mabon. It is Mabon today, the autumn equinox. And in the tradition of earth-centered peoples, this holiday is named Mabon after the Welsh mythic figure Mabon ap Modron. And it was only named Mabon actually in the 1970s. It's named for Mabon, the son of the light, who is the son of Modron, the great mother. So they first appear in Arthurian legend and myth, and Mabon is said to be the son of divine sunlight and this earth goddess mother, Modron. So in other words, Mabon, the Welsh mythic character, represents the union of earth and the heavens, the sun. It's not clear exactly why this name was given to the fall equinox, maybe 50 years ago. It's also not at all clear exactly how Celtic or Welsh peoples actually celebrated the fall equinox in history. But what is clear is that this holiday has been celebrated around the world for most of time. It's the time when we honor the fruits of the earth, when we give thanks for crops ripened by the sunlight and nurtured by rain, nurtured in the earth. It's the time to appreciate the harvest season and to prepare wisely for the colder months that are coming. Now, I've celebrated earth-based seasons for a very long time, for many years, as the year turns from the new birth of spring to the wild growing of summer, the gentling time, the harvest of autumn, and then the cold, deep fallow time, and the death of winter. The equinox in the fall, though, is my favorite holiday because I love the cool air, the leaves that are falling in my yard, just the gentling way that this season arrives. Now, I moved to the farm here about 3.5 years ago, And I find myself getting more and more committed to these holidays the longer I spend on the farm, because the actual cycles of the season mean more to me living so close to the earth. It's probably the truth that the closer we live to the earth, the more we feel its actual turning. My partner Tracy and I here on the farm, we work very physically and very practically to provide the heat for our home. Our wood pile is in the background. We provide most of our own food for ourselves. We do a lot of the work here with our own hands. Together, we prepare the ground in late winter. We sow seeds in spring. We battle the riot of weeds that come up in the summer. In 95-degree heat, we tend to them. We toil over the gardens from dawn to dusk for many months out of the year. In the midst of heat and humidity, we hand harvest thousands, and I mean literally thousands of fruits. Greens and squash and beans and carrots and onions and potatoes. This year alone, we harvested about 1,400 pounds of potatoes, picking them up by hand from the soil and carrying them and sorting them. We prepare the foods for sale at market. We store them here. Whole sections of our home are set up just for vegetable storage for the winter. And we, in the winter, plant crops that are appropriate for the winter to nourish the soil and to hold that soil safe until spring with things that we can still eat. I cannot possibly describe the amount I have learned about life and what it means to be human on this planet in the last 3 years at the farm. It's indescribable. But today I want to tell you about just one thing, one little thing. And it's something you may not have thought about very much. Beans. Beans. Particularly, we'll talk today about black beans. So have you ever eaten black beans? Maybe in a burrito or in soup? Maybe you've had pintos. I have some of those too. Or kidneys. Here's the jar of kidneys just starting. This is a kidney bean plant. These are the beans waiting to come off their pods. How about Great Northerns or white beans? We've got those too. So if you've eaten beans, you can maybe relate to this. This year, the beans that we grew, 6 rows of them, each row 150 foot long, for a total of 900 linear feet of beans to be dried. That was all my responsibility this year. I basically did the entire project by myself, which involved literally between 80 and 120 hours of work. It's not done yet, so I'm not sure. These simple beans, along with everything else I've learned on the farm, have taught me one thing, the most important lesson above all others. Modern humans, living in what we think of as the developed world, are utterly and profoundly ignorant of what it takes to provide food, water, shelter, clothing, heat for our own lives. We, and I include me in this because I'm just beginning to get it. And I thought I was an environmentalist before I moved here, but I'm just beginning to understand how little I understand. We have no clue, and I really mean no clue, how much energy and effort and space and resources it takes to sustain us. Most humans in the developed world left behind subsistence existence a very long time ago. We moved into an era of grocery stores and Target and Walmart and online shopping, and we are pretty much oblivious to everything that goes into every single object we use, every item we buy, every morsel we eat, every sip we drink. It has occurred to me that if nothing else, the point of the harvest, the holidays of the fall equinox time, is to wake up to just what it takes to sustain us. So beans. So Here's a jar of black beans. All right. Now, this particular jar was grown last summer, so it's one of the very few jars I have left that didn't get eaten during the winter. Beans like these, and this is about 32 ounces. At Kroger, for a jar of conventionally raised beans, that would, for 32 ounces, would be about $3. Now, these are 100% organic, absolutely no chemicals at all used on these beans. So we could probably add a couple dollars to that amount, being generous. So let's call it a $5 jar of beans. Okay? Now, this particular jar is one of about 22 that we'll be using this winter. I'm not exactly sure how many I'm going to have because, as you can see, most of the beans aren't shelled yet. You can see just a couple baskets here. I have probably 10 times this much. Some of it's still on the plants. Some of it's already in baskets. So let's say I'm going to have about 22 jars of beans, and each jar is worth about $5. So that's about $110 worth of beans, right? Now let's talk about what went into those beans, the costs. The seed was pretty inexpensive. As I've just noted, dried beans don't go for very much, right? Water was free because that particular garden has no irrigation, but we still need to appreciate that the rain came and the sun came in just the right mixture for my beans to grow and thrive. Labor costs are where it gets really interesting, though. So here's a rough breakdown of the labor cost for these beans. Preparing the ground. About 4 hours during last summer when we put down landscape fabric and burned holes in it so that it would keep the weeds down while things grew out of those holes. This summer, another 10 hours pulling the weeds out of those existing holes and stirring up the soil to prepare it. Planting took another 6 hours of poking seeds in the ground. Mind you, this was in 95-degree heat and humidity. Weeding, about 6 hours over the course of a couple months. Harvesting. The first round was picking the earliest dried bean pods off of the plants, probably another 6 hours. Harvesting the second round, which was pulling up the whole plants that were left, carrying them by loads on a tarp to the front porch where I could process them. I'd say another 4 hours there, give or take. Removing the pods, so these guys, from the plants. I've got about 4 hours in that so far. That's probably inaccurate. I've probably got more about 6 or 7 hours in it so far, and I've got easily another 5 or 6 hours to go. Now, shelling the beans, that's a whole nother story. Like I said, I've got baskets and baskets of these. That will take many hours. As fall arrives and the weather cools down and we spend more time inside, we sit in front of the fire, we shell beans while we watch television. We shell beans while dinner's cooking. We shell beans when we're just tired. We shell beans for like 3 months. We shell beans. So I'm going to guess we got another 30 to 40 hours in shelling beans. So let's say that's somewhere around 80-ish hours, maybe 100 hours in the beans. Now, if the value of those beans is $110, that means I've earned somewhere between $1 and $1.50 per hour for my labor, minus the cost of seeds, which we've said is negligible. So that's not so great. And it's actually a painful reminder of how little we value our food. But Carol, you might say, you could have done it so much easier. You just could have done it with a tractor and had a really big field of beans, and you could have used economies of scale, and you could have done a whole bunch of beans with machines, and that would have been so much cheaper. That's why they're so cheap. Well, yes and no. So remember 7th grade science and the principle of conservation of energy? It applies here. We could have done it with significantly less human energy cost, but not with less energy cost overall. So the commercial growing version of producing these beans would have involved very different costs and different resources. So here's a breakdown of what it would have cost in energy and resources. phrase these more conventionally in a big field. First, hours of heavy equipment use and untold gallons of fuel to remove trees and ground cover from an area to create the giant bean field. Second, the displacement and death of dozens of species of animals, small rodents, birds, and other creatures. The number of rabbits and mice and voles and moles and songbirds and coyotes and all kinds of other species whose ecosystems are devastated by large-scale farming, it's horrifying. You don't think about that when you buy your pasta at the store, but that wheat field killed thousands of creatures to be created. Third, the use of large quantities of chemical pesticides and herbicides, which in turn destroy pollinators and other beneficial insects, and also pollute groundwater and run off into rivers and streams and lakes and destroy habitat for fish and frogs and all sorts of other creatures. Next, more equipment use and fuel for the tractors to till and harvest those bean fields, and then trucks to transport the beans. Not to mention the destruction and devastation of soil microsystems. So the microbes and the biomes that live in the soil, those networks of connection are actually what put nutrients into our food. So when we do this massive tillage, we actually destroy those so the nutrients can't get in our food. Okay, more ecosystem devastation to create a bean processing plant. Chemicals in the soil and waterways to help the plant do its job, however it does it. Plastic production to create bags for the beans to travel in. And trucks to take the bagged beans to the store. Don't forget that you had to have a store in the first place, so there was another footprint and another piece of land that became a store. And let's not forget all the people hours that went into producing and running all those machines and working at the store, and then you actually had to drive a car to the store. It's a lot of resources for beans. It's a lot of fairly invisible resources and costs that I didn't have to put in to my beans. In my personal opinion, it's way, way more expensive to buy cheap beans than to grow my own. So what's my point? I know that not everybody can live the way I live, although truthfully, I wish you could. We can see the Milky Way every night that there aren't clouds here. I wish you could taste the taste of food, almost all of our food that's fresh from the field. But we can't all do that. But we can appreciate it. The point is this: if we're going to appreciate the harvest, let's take it seriously. We're going to appreciate the harvest of all the things we eat and drink and have. We probably need to think more deeply about what went into those things. Simply put, there is not one single thing, not one food we eat or one sip we drink, not one item of clothing we wear or one tool we use or toy of any size that we enjoy, not the heat in our houses or the air conditioning in our cars, the entertainment on our computers or televisions. There's not one single thing in our lives that we can take for granted. Because they all, each and every single one of them, took enormous energy and resources to produce and sustain and get to us. I said to my stepdaughter one day this summer, I think the world would be a completely different place. It would be profoundly changed if every single person thought about this. If each time we purchased anything, new shoes, a pair of sunglasses, a burger, sweet tea at the gas station, a box of pasta, a journal to write in, anything, if every time we purchased something we were required to go through the exercise I just took you through with the beans? What if we actually appreciated and put an honest value on every single input that went into every item we use? I'm pretty old-fashioned, but that kind of way of thinking used to be required by people who supported themselves off the land. I'm not saying we should go back. I just think we kind of lost that awareness in the translation. Again, there's not a single thing that didn't, in some form or other, require enormous energy to produce. But we don't think about that because we take things for granted. And frankly, our earth is suffering so badly to a degree that we may never be able to fix it because of our carelessness. But Carol, you might be thinking, you're making me feel guilty. Are you trying to make me feel guilty? The answer is no. I'm not actually hoping anyone will feel guilty. I'm just hoping we'll wake up. We get to wake up in a world where the sun rises and the rain falls and food is available. I'm trying to help us remember that our values say we care for the earth, we believe in having open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. So let's take the opportunity to live into that a little more. This fall equinox, this harvest season, let's truly count our blessings. Let's understand that every single day we reap the harvest of countless hours of labor by people we will never meet. We will benefit from enormous amounts of energy extracted and expended for our survival and our comfort. We receive blessings from countless acres of ecosystem that have been converted and destroyed. We live off the lives of countless species that have been donated to our ease and our comfort. So let's be awake. Let's be mindful consumers. We cannot help but consume, and we live in the time we live in, but let's be awake. I've heard many UUs say that they don't like the phrase, have a blessed day, and I understand that. There's a certain feeling that you have to adhere to a certain set of rules and understand the world in a certain way to receive that blessing. You know, we don't like the feeling that blessings are conferred by some hand over which we have no control. We like to focus on our ability to create the world we dream of. And yet, so much of our lives comes to us unconsciously and invisibly. I would argue that we are, in fact, having blessed days every single day of our lives. We are, in fact, being given gifts by unseen hands and unseen sources that are larger than our comprehension. We're receiving blessings every day from lives not our own, from species not the same as ours, in ways we don't truly understand. And we rarely, if ever, stop to appreciate them. So I don't mind spending over 100 hours on my beans. It was hard work. It is hard work. It's good work, though. And I know one really important thing as I do it. I'm awake. I'm aware every step of the way of how much energy it took to create the food that gives me energy to sustain my life. If we could just remember to pay attention to that simple chain of events, energy being used to give energy that we turn into our lives. It seems to me that awareness could change the world. It would certainly change the way we make decisions. So, this week we have a chance, an opportunity. This week, just try this simple experiment. Everything you eat, everything you drink, everything you use, a tool, a toy, everything you buy, try to trace it back through all those resources to its origin. Now, this is exhausting and overwhelming and a little depressing, but it's worth doing. Think about giving this little experiment a shot. Make it an autumn equinox practice. Just maybe for a day or a week if you can manage it. And see if it changes you. See if it makes you, at the very least, look at things in a new light. Even if it doesn't change your behavior, though I kind of hope it will. I hope you'll try it. I hope it will help you appreciate the amazing harvest of life that we experience without thinking about it every single day. And I hope that the blessings of the fall, the changing of the seasons, and the turning of the year fill your life with joy and gratitude. May it be so. We have a tiny little flame still burning in the midst of the wind. So even in challenging times, that light is still real. These times are challenging and the tasks in front of us are huge, but the community is strong. May this flame represent that the light of truth, the fire of commitment, and the warmth of community are with us always, even when we are not together. Go in peace. Happy equinox.